Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us on today's session on how the complete solution future-proofs the industry. My name is James Edwards, and I'm a business development manager here at OpenAthens. And just before we get started in the session, there are a few housekeeping things I'd like to mention. So the session is being recorded, and there is also hopefully an opportunity for a short Q&A at the end. So if you do have any questions, then please pop them into the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. If you do have any chat or general conversations, then yeah, keep that to the chat box. So questions in the Q&A and any chat that's in that nice little chat box. Also, if you'd like to view the closed captions, then it is an option. There is an option, sorry, to turn these on in the menu bar at the bottom of your page, and you can also choose which language they are shown in. So I'm now going to hand over to David Orr. David is our applications architect here at OpenAthens, and he's been a member of the team for many years. He is an expert in his field and a key reason behind the strength of our product today. So yeah, David, over to you.
All right, thanks. And yeah, welcome everyone to this session. So we're going to talk a little bit about OpenAthens, some of the authentication methods that we support, and some of the work we've been doing quite recently. So let's just kind of quickly look through some of the different authentication methods that are generally used within our space. So I imagine many people on this call are familiar with IP recognition. So this is a very sort of commonly used means to control access to publisher resources, and it really works by ring fencing a part of a network, so say a campus or location, and granting access to content based on that location of the user. Clearly, we're familiar there's a lot of downsides to that, mainly that off-site access can't be achieved without other means. And there's also problems with security because you've got very little control over who's on that network and exactly who's accessing what content. So kind of a solution that's been used for many years to sort of address some of those problems is a proxy service. So products like Easy Proxy, which libraries run on behalf of their users. And this really, it still uses IP recognition because the publisher sees the IP address of the proxy server, but it allows off-site access to users because they sign into that proxy server. Moving on again, we're kind of in nearer now where proxies are complicated and time-consuming to manage. So a lot of organizations are effectively outsourcing the management to third parties, one of which is OpenAthens. So this is just the managed proxy solution, and this has a lot of the sort of advantages of the proxy in that it facilitates off-site access, but without the sort of the overhead and the time required to actually sort of manage your proxy configurations. And then sort of the final method that we're going to talk about is federated access. So this is really the core of the OpenAthens service. And this allows you to sign into publishers directly without a need for a proxy server. Obviously, it needs the publisher to integrate that access method into their site. So as a consequence, not all publishers support federated access. So that's just a really quick sort of overview of the methods that are sort of commonly used within our space. So what does OpenAthens offer? So we kind of think of ourselves as a total solution. So we sort of fit into the last two of those boxes that I've talked about. So let's talk a little bit about federated authentication in a bit more detail. So what a federation is, it's really a trust relationship between ourselves as organizations and publishers, which allows us to exchange information about our users to enable sign-on. So unlike a proxy and IP authentication, we're able to pass information about individual users to the publisher rather than just sort of where they're located. So you've got advantages of being able to support things like personalization within the publisher site. As part of federated access, there's complete control over exactly what information is exchanged. So it can be just information about your organization, or it can be down to full sort of personal attributes about the user. Typically within our space, it's sort of in the middle, in that we don't pass email addresses about users, we pass identifiers which will uniquely identify the user, but not expose personal information like email address. So federated access is sort of very commonly used, both within the library space, but also in the sort of the corporate enterprise space. And it's really been sort of commonly placed for sort of over 10 years or so now. So that's federated access. So what's actually a federation? So think of a federation as a bit of like a club that organizations, libraries and publishers can join, that allows all of those relationships to be set up. And this is really where OpenAthens sits. So it allows us to scale up federated identity so that hundreds of thousands of organizations can talk to hundreds of different sites without a lot of technical setup being required. Yeah, so that it really is sort of the space that OpenAthens sits in. But what we offer isn't limited solely to federated authentication. So we kind of recognize that the big platforms out there do support federated access, but there's a huge number of library resources that are published by much smaller organizations who don't have the skills and the need to set up federated access. So proxy is still an important solution within our space. So as I mentioned in the earlier slide, we offer a proxy service as a managed product. So this provides offsite access to publishers that don't support federated access. So we provide a completely managed proxy, we provide an IP address, we manage the configuration of those proxy sites. So if you're used to managing Easy Proxy yourself, then you don't have the overhead and the time required to keep all of those configurations working. Just like Easy Proxy, we support wafeless access, so deep links, so you can have a single link that will work and provide access to publisher content. So if you use like a link resolver, then it can integrate within that solution as well. And kind of what's sort of unique about our waveless access is that it works irrespective of whether the publisher uses federated access or proxy access. So if a publisher is using proxy now or supporting proxy now, and then they migrate to federated in the future, then your links won't change. So it's independent of the method that's being used to access. So we support the proxy on a global basis. So a lot of work went on last year to expand our proxy so that we've now got presence in multiple locations. So Europe, Asia Pacific, and North America. So we've got infrastructure in all of those locations to sort of enable the highest sort of performance possible for the proxy. We also support the ability, if you're currently running Easy Proxy, you can reuse your existing IP address. There's a little bit of extra technical setup required if you want to go that route, but that is also an option that we provide as well. So yeah, really just to summarize sort of where OpenAthens sits within this space, within all of these different authentication methods. So we provide a solution that's sort of independent of whether the publisher requires IP access, federated access, or if you're managing Easy Proxy yourself currently. We provide wafeless links, irrespective of the authentication method that's used. And kind of most importantly, I think the last bullet point speaks to this, is that we've got a lot of experience with OpenAthens of working with all these different technologies. So we've got experts both in SAML, which is the main standard behind federated access, and proxy. So we can sort of provide you with the best support for all of these methods. And we're constantly working to sort of assist publishers in sort of uptake of federated access. So yeah, that's a quick overview of sort of OpenAthens and what solutions we provide, really. So we've got about 5 minutes or so for questions if there are any, James.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, David. Yeah, we'll just give some time for some more questions going in there. I guess, one thing that's quite key, David, is to understand is, how do you see the future of that kind of authentication changing anyway? I mean, do you see an end to IP at some point, or would that be how it's going? Have you got any thoughts on how things might be moving forward?
I mean, yeah, for sure. There's definitely a trend to federated access, and I think, what I didn't really touch on with proxy servers is that the web's getting a lot more complicated. Publisher platforms are getting a lot more complicated, which means the lifetime of proxy products like Easy Proxy and proxies that have to rewrite content. It's getting increasingly difficult to support some publisher sites now, just because of the complexity of them. So there's definitely a technical push towards federated access for some of those reasons. Security is the other angle as well. A lot of the security standards that platforms are having to support now really are not particularly compatible with proxy servers.
And would you say, like, federated, in an ideal world, all publishers were working in that federated manner? I mean, I'd assume that that's going to make user experience, which is key to all this, just simplify the whole process. It's all about coming together, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, as I said, there's a huge number of platforms that don't support federated access, but there's a sort of constant trend in that direction. And I think it really depends very much on the publisher content and the type of access. And clearly over the last couple of years with the pandemic and so on, there's been a greater push to the need for offsite access and remote access, not solely limited to IP recognition as well.
Perfect. Okay. I can't see any more questions coming in. So I'd like to thank you, David, for your presentation today, and thank you all those for attending. We are going to now take a 20-minute break, so there is a nice bit of time now to go get a cup of tea, and we'll hopefully see you all back here in 20 minutes for the next session that you choose to watch. All right, thank you all.